Hey friends, welcome back to Rita Talks. I'm Rita, and on this YouTube channel I just share some of the thoughts, ideas I've been thinking about, some of the things that have been going on in my head. And in today's video I want to talk about a topic that I've somewhat had a lot of empirical experience with in my life, and it's basically just this idea that I had to learn the hard way, that basically nothing is inevitable. What I mean by that is basically before I used to think about habits and I don't know, statements that people would make around me in my life, and I would take them to such a literal sense, and I would literally take them for truth. So basically, like an example of this, I remember when Casey Neistat was making these vlogs, he was talking about this idea that like you just have to run every day and then at some point it becomes automatic. And actually what I realized in how many times I've tried and failed to build habits and then finally figured out, like the trick that finally allowed me to figure out how to actually form good habits, is that actually habits mean that it becomes easier to do something, but they don't mean that they become like it becomes inevitable that you do something. There's always like a part of agency that is always involved. You have to make a conscious choice every day. It does become easier to make that conscious choice to stick to the habit, but it does not mean that it's inevitable. If anything, this YouTube channel, this Rita Talks, is a testament to that, right? This is, I don't know, episode, I think 398, and this is still, like, it has gotten easier, but it does not mean that it's inevitable. I have every day to show up and like come up with something to talk about and make an intentional effort to make it happen. And basically, before, the mistake that I would make is just assume that on day 66 of a habit, that day 67 I don't have, like, I will do everything to prevent me from doing the habit and somehow expect there to be some supernatural force that will somehow force me to follow through with it, because it's supposed to become automatic after 66 days of doing it, right? Which is absurd if I think about it in retrospect, but that's genuinely how I took this kind of information. I took it in such a literal way that I, like, first of all, the bar for forming the habit was low in my head. So for me, I would have formed the habit after 30 days. And after 30 days, I'll be like, oh, I do this thing. And then maybe 5 days later, I stopped doing it. And so I had to build up little by little evidence that I could do things for longer periods of time. And basically, I've learned to not take the progress that I've made for granted, because it has happened to me so many times where I would reach a specific milestone, like do something for 100 days. I remember I had done this, meditate every day for 100 days. And I thought, okay, I got this habit locked. And then 3 days later, I stopped. And I had like really stopped for a really long time after that. And it's just this realization that habits do not become automatic, they become easier, but it does not mean that they're inevitable in the proper sense of the word. And because I love mathematics, I wanted to, like, every time someone said, oh, this thing is gonna be inevitable, I just wanted to, my head wanted to test whether that was true in an absolute sense, which obviously it's not. It almost never is. And so, yeah. So basically, nothing is inevitable. And the reason that I've been thinking about this is it kind of pertains to this topic of prescriptions. And I don't remember who. Yeah, I think it was on the Naval podcast. I think I talked about it a few days back. And basically, I think he had this guest who was just talking about the fact that prescriptions, like basically, as humans, like prescriptions don't work. And what we mean by prescriptions is a set of rules that someone else comes up with and tries to give us as the secret to some specific thing. Like the secret to YouTube is to post a video every week for 4 years. And it's like, really? Is that all there is? I mean, and basically, actually, there the underlying assumption is that if you do that, you basically you cannot just post gibberish every week for 4 years because there's an underlying assumption of quality. The underlying assumption that we are humans, and given that we are humans, we like to do things well. And given this constraint of doing things well, if we force ourselves to put out one video per week for 4 years, we will have this inner drive to enforce these quality standards, and so the inevitably, here that word comes in again. If we enforce this quality standard that's inherent within us, our videos will become better and better and succeed on YouTube. So basically, in this, like when I think Naval's guest on that podcast was talking about prescriptions, he was talking about the fact that basically there's so many non-fiction books and like self-help books that say, this is the secret, wake up at 5 a.m, meditate, go for a run, whatever, and like they give you like some specific formula that works for the specific author, and basically the problem with that is, as humans, we don't like to be told what to do, and so that's why prescriptions don't work. And the only reason that specific thing, that specific like routine worked, is because whoever invented it figured it out on their own. And so it's not as if like it's the process of figuring out that makes it worth it, not the routine itself that has value. It's the process of figuring out what works for you that inherently has value, not the result of that figuring it out, right? It's like basically it's kind of is like it's the process of like of participating to the lottery. Like basically the routine itself is someone telling you, here's my lottery ticket, here's my winning lottery ticket number, which does not have any value, because if it won yesterday, then it's even less likely actually to win today. But I mean, it's not that disconnected, because obviously there is like some underlying truth within that. But basically, if you just model stuff based on one data point, you won't be able to, like, the likelihood that it immediately works for you as someone who's entirely different from whoever figured out that specific prescription is low. And not only that, because as humans we don't like being told what to do, and we inherently enjoy figuring stuff on our own, basically we're unlikely to stick to that specific prescription. So yeah, this is like, I kept going back to this idea of nothing is inevitable. Nothing is inevitable. And it's both good news and also bad news. Because it means that wherever we are, whichever position we're in, anything is possible. And that goes in both ways. So nothing is inevitable, as in the doom is not inevitable. Let's say someone, like, you're born in some very harsh circumstances, etc. Nothing is inevitable. So you're not doomed to stay in those circumstances, because as humans we have agency to do something about our circumstances and make them better, and we can basically change them. That's one thing. But also, the flip side of that is, if things are going well for you, does not mean that they will always go well. Nothing is inevitable. Growth is not inevitable. Change, actually, is inevitable. So I guess I would amend this to be, nothing but change is inevitable. So nothing is inevitable. So let's say for me, like, on this posting these kind of YouTube videos of Rita Talks, it's not inevitable that they will get an audience. It's really not. And the only thing that, like, if I just keep posting and I don't get any better, I mean, it's not gonna get an audience. Like, that's for sure, right? But because nothing is inevitable, success is not inevitable, this reaching people is not inevitable. It means that every time I have to keep trying to make these videos better and improve myself, and just try and try again and not take anything for granted. Because it's from that knowledge that nothing is inevitable that I realized that, okay, I have to try harder. I have to try and figure out how to make it work, right? And it's incredibly empowering, but with it comes a lot of responsibility. Something else that I think this applies to is the future is not inevitable. As in, let's say we want to make the world a better place. The world becoming a better place is not inevitable unless we work to make it a better place and not take it for granted that it's gonna become a better place. So keep trying and not take what we want to happen for granted. So this kind of reminds me of this idea of pessimists and basically optimists that don't take any action. Are we can put them in the same bucket, because pessimists are like, nothing is ever gonna get better, and optimists who don't take action are optimists that say, oh, things are gonna work out anyway. And basically neither of them are right, because things are not gonna work out anyway. You have to make them work out. And it kind of reminds me of this idea that if you want to see the future, you have to make it. To some extent, if you want to see what the future looks like, you have to somehow make it. I don't know if that's the quote or if that's the idiom. It's not an idiom, but it's like, I don't know who I've heard say this. I think maybe it was Elon Musk or whatever. So nothing is inevitable. Like, something that also reminded me of this was the story of Rolex that I heard on the Founders podcast. I think it was episode something around 350. I don't remember the specific number. But basically, at the time that the Rolex guy, so the founder of Rolex, started working in the world of watches, basically wristwatches did not exist. Actually, wristwatches for men did not exist. So 90% of the market was pocket watches. And so basically, if you look at the information that he had, he knew that like everyone thought he was crazy to think that wristwatches were gonna work. And now it's like kind of the only type of watch that exists, if we don't take into account our phones, which also counts as a watch. But basically, you have to acknowledge that if he had not made all of those breakthroughs in watchmaking, so making, like, if the mechanism did not become small enough to fit on a wrist because the pocket watches were bigger, we would never have had wristwatches. And if he had not made wristwatches super precise and then made them waterproof and all of this kind of stuff, kept on improving on them little by little, like something that we take so much for granted today would never have come to light, because it was not inevitable, and he knew it. He knew that it was not inevitable, and that it hinged on some very specific, that unless those assumptions were true, wristwatches were not going to be a thing. And so he worked really hard to overcome those specific problems, those specific blockers for wristwatches becoming more widely used. And by fixing those specific problems, wristwatches became inevitable. But they never were. Like, he identified what were the characteristics that were required for them to become more widespread, and did not just assume that somehow it was gonna fall into place. He made it fall into place by working obsessively on those specific problems. And so I think at least viewing the world this way has been so liberating and also much harder to deal with, but it's like a cheat code, right? From me realizing that my habits, maintaining my habits is not inevitable, and I have to keep working at it every day, even when I've done it for a really long time, has been the best thing for all of my habits. That's why so far this year, like, this has been the longest I've maintained any habits whatsoever. I have so many habits that I'm maintaining that I don't take for granted, because I keep showing up and I keep not taking it for granted, and that's what allows me to maintain them, by not taking them for granted. And this is something that I've just noticed. Like, innovation is not inevitable, at least not on the individual scale. And I would like to believe that, given each of our unique perspectives in this life, my unique perspective from the experiences that I've had so far, make me see some stuff that the next person would not be able to see. And that next person will be able to see some stuff that I'm not able to see, just because of their unique experiences in life. And we have to not take these unique experiences that we each have for granted. And if we see something, like, just follow our intuition and try it. Because if it's not there, it might be that it's not helpful, but most likely it just means that there hasn't been anyone with your very specific, unique circumstances and, like, qualifications to be able to see that opportunity. And basically it's your responsibility to follow through on that idea, and to not take for granted what you see, and not think that it's inevitable that it's gonna get found out or discovered. You are uniquely equipped to make it happen, and so you just have to have this self-belief to follow through on it, and be somewhat relentless with trying to make that vision happen, and overcome all of the obstacles that you're gonna inevitably meet. So this was the topic of the day, and honestly, like, just thinking about this, I owe to the Theory of Knowledge podcast. So it's called TOK Cast by Brett Hall, and I listened to a couple episodes of it today, and I was completely blown away by just the quality of thinking that he shares, and I've been learning so much from listening to this podcast, and I'm super grateful that Naval shared it. Like, it has gotten me so excited, and I've just been thinking all day about all sorts of ideas. So basically, the podcast that somehow reminded me of this idea that nothing is inevitable except maybe change, is the podcast episode number 209, and I think it's called, let's see, let me try and find it. It's called Rational Decision Making. So this is the let's see, can you see it? Yes. So Talkcast, and basically episode 209, Rational Decision Making, and basically this podcast is led by Brett Hall, and I'm just so happy to be listening to this and to have found this podcast. It's just like incredible. It just allowed me to, like, I learned so much today from just listening to this, and I'm super grateful for podcasts like this, and basically content like this that completely challenges me mentally and gets me excited about finding out more about these topics. So I'm super grateful to you, Mr. Brett Hall, for the content that you're making, and first of all for Naval Ravikant for having introduced me to your work. So thank you both. I really appreciate your contributions to this world, and thank you for inspiring me. I just was so excited to be able to learn all of these new topics. I think my brain was so excited today. So somehow it got me thinking about the inevitability of things, and like the fact that nothing is inevitable, and how it applies to habits. And I think basically he was talking about it from the perspective of all of these people who give prophecies, like climate prophecies, AI prophecies, and say this is inevitable, but actually nothing is, because all of these prophecies do not take into account human agency. And it kind of reminded me of how that applies on the micro level, and how I've noticed it myself in my day-to-day life, in my like quest to building good habits. And I just thought I would it would be really cool to talk about it in this video. So yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. That's all I wanted to talk about for today. You can click here to watch my previous video on this channel, so don't wait before this one, or you can click here to watch my latest video on the channel overall. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, night, whichever time of day it is where you are right now. Bye for now, and hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye.